Thank you so much, Dr. Henry Burrell, for just equipping us with those little tips about how we can create the calm, not just for our children, but for each other, right? And when you see your principal running around with big pockets, now you know why. So now I would like to invite Dr. Chantal Basson, Clinical and Educational Committee Chair of the Alex Panton Foundation, to the stage. She's going to be moderating a panel discussion entitled Powerful Support Systems, How Connection Builds Resilience. Dr. Chantal will be joined by our panelists, Elizabeth Brown-Richmond, teacher of John Gray High School, Ms. Toni Edwards, Ms. Monique Hibbert, Youth Ambassador for the Alex Panton Foundation, and Laura Larner, Certified Professional Coach for Your Paradise Life. You will have the opportunity to ask a few questions at the end, so jot them down, and Mike will come to you at the end. And I'll now invite the team to the stage.
God, that's a tough act to follow, isn't it? I haven't got pockets in these trousers at all. I feel like I need one of those safety kits just for myself in the day when I'm trying to parent. I need where's my sewing kit? Oh, where's my rain stick? Definitely need one of those. Yeah, thank you for all those tips. That was absolutely incredible, and all made us giggle too, because I think we can recognize a lot of that in ourselves, and some very important points about trying to regulate ourselves and co-regulate our children. So, continuing the theme of lighting the way, turning hope into action, I have the incredible privilege of sharing the stage today with 4 very powerful women who have bravely agreed to share their experiences with us. So it's really interesting, I think, today to think that mental health issues and distress have been with us for more than 4,000 years before we had paper. And on that note, thinking about how powerful support systems have evolved and how connection builds resilience, I'm delighted to be able to introduce our panelists. I'm going to ask each in turn to take a moment just to introduce themselves. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Brown-Richmond. I'm a mother. I'm an educator for over 26 years, and I'm a neurodiversity advocate. And I just want to say thank you to the Alex Panton Foundation for creating such a space for us to have this important conversation.
Hi, my name is Toni Edwards. I don't have a specialist background. My background is my personal experience. I have bipolar type 1, and I do have borderline personality disorder. So I am appreciative of having the opportunity to be up here to speak as someone who has been through the experience, has, attempted suicide, and who is still fighting. And I have dealt with the support, and I know what it is as well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Monique Hibbert. I am a youth ambassador of the Alex Panton Foundation. I'm a legal professional. I am also a mental health advocate and big in fitness. And I want to also thank the Alex Panton Foundation for allowing me and my colleagues to be here just to talk about the stigma that is the darkness in mental health and making it a space to be more supportive around that and providing us with tips and tools to use.
Hello everyone, I'm Laura Larner. I've been an attorney for the past 20 years, practicing both here and in the UK. So I have extensive experience of the youth justice system and of the impact one can have advocating for young people in that capacity. I'm now a life coach, and I work with young people and their families in developing skills to better equip them to navigate the challenges of their academic lives. I'm also a widow and solo parent who's had to dig into her own resilience in order to equip her young daughter with the skills to lead her life in the absence of her dad.
Thank you so much. Life vests are under your seat. I don't know why I don't have tissues with me. I've needed them all day so far. So please take a moment to get some water if you need it. Everybody else, get your tissues together if you need those. And I'm going to start by coming to you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You are a teacher
Yeah.
and you're a parent. You have a great deal of experience of working with young people. What have you learned about support systems and what makes them good? And how do we use that to build resilience?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, Chantal. When I think of a strong support system, from my experience, I see a collaborative system built from multiple sources. And if I should think back at my own story, a pivotal moment for me, I remember when my middle child just ended high school and she was on work experience. And independently, she went to Alex's place and booked herself in. So imagine my shock when I got the call and I realized I had to go and, sign some documents because she was still a minor at the time. And I do have her permission to share this story. And I hadn't realized that she was struggling so much with anxiety and other issues. And however imperfect my support may have been, because as parents we don't have a manual, so we try the best we can. And she somehow realized that she could take that step and go and get help. I hadn't realized she was struggling with all these internal issues because she didn't present as a child that was struggling. She was well-behaved, courteous, didn't give teachers any problems. Of course, there were incidents when I would have thought that she was being shy or a little lazy, or teachers complained she wasn't finishing her work. And of course, I worked harder in trying to teach certain things, certain social skills. You know something is off, but you brush it off. And as a faith-based person, I would pray. But then I've learned over time that prayer is good. But the Bible also says that in a multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so when she presented at Alex's place and we realized all these things were happening and they were able, as a system, they were able to put in all these supports, the counselors, the therapists, you name it. I learned that she actually went through all of high school undiagnosed. And even as teachers, we may be taught to recognize certain issues some children may be having through disruption and dysregulation. But if we miss the signs, we don't see that the quiet ones may be carrying things that you can't see, burdens, anxiety, and all these things. And so we have to really notice. And at the same time, I was dealing with this new reality. For me, it's a new reality. For her, she was carrying all of this. I have a younger son who is actually diagnosed with autism. So his needs were louder. He was more externalized with how he presented. So I felt he needed my attention more. And so I didn't pay so much attention to the one that I thought was okay. And I remember once she said to me that I'm not spending enough time with her, and I got defensive. And I said, what do you mean I'm not spending enough time with you? I take you everywhere I go. You're here with me all the time. But then I really thought about it after and reflected and realized that presence does not necessarily mean that you're emotionally available. And so that's another thing I had to bear in mind. And so quiet doesn't always mean calm. I've learned that. And then I've also learned to recognize what masking looks like, because she was masking through maybe, her behavior, trying to copy others to see what normal looked like. I didn't understand why she was going through issues such as bullying and so on. And so learning all of this, I had to actually get support because I was overwhelmed now. And I'm thinking of my job. I have to turn up for other people's children. I have to try and do well at my job. I don't have time to be taking time off to take them to all these therapies. So I had to really slow down. I had to get help from other colleagues, checking with families who were going through similar situation, and learn now to regulate myself so that I could co-regulate with my children so that I could really help them to really hear, to really ask the right questions instead of being critical, start to be more curious. Why? How can I help you? Because they don't necessarily have, as we've learned from all the presentation, they don't necessarily have all the language to articulate how they're feeling. And so we really have to listen, really look for the signs, and really seek the support of all the systems that are in place. There are so many of those organizations available at the booth, and really find out, do a research. And for me, a strong system of support will include collaborating with all the professionals. And remember, even for those of us in the faith-based community, prayer and the professionals and the medical side, they're not enemies. They complement each other, right? So the whole, supporting the whole body, spiritual, the physical, the mental. And for me, that's what a strong support system looks like.
Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth.
Yes.
I think your very strong message is about needing multiple sources, and it's not just support for the young person who's struggling, that as parents we need to make sure we have our support as well.
Yes.
And that just because a young person is quiet does not mean that they are okay.
Yes.
And to really check in on them, and as Jane was saying earlier, to observe and to be curious.
Yes.
Especially when they're quiet, because the loud behavior we see and we can respond to, but the quiet behavior is much harder. And I love your idea of what does normal look like. Indeed, what does normal look like? Thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Toni, you are someone who has really had to find your way through some extreme challenges, and you've experienced mental health difficulties within that. What for you makes a good support system, and how does that help, and how has it helped to build your resilience, and what hasn't helped?
Okay, so for me, when I first was diagnosed, I didn't have the support system of my family. My family was in denial of it. My mom's somewhere out there. I love you, Mom, but she was in denial as well. I grew up in a Caribbean household, as most of us have, in a Christian household. So when you're faced with mental health, it's like, no, we'll pray it away. There's nothing wrong with you. And over time, my mother and my family members being in denial of it, it made it worse and worse. It wasn't until I actually started self-harming and I went to the hospital and got flushed out when I was living in the States. I think that's when it connected for my mom, and she was like, oh, my child really does need help. How can I help? That's when she started to become more open with my therapists, my psychiatrists. The rest of my family members also started to join in, and I would say I was the light that educated them and got them on board to realize, yes, we can pray, yes, we can have our still modern traditions, as you said, but at the same time, we need to work hand in hand with the professionals. The professionals are not against us. They are here to help us. So with my family support, church support, friend support. When I say friends, it's finding people who are like-minded like you. You know, your friends don't have to have, most of my friends don't have what I have, but at the same time, they're understanding to what I need. So they know if I'm having a day where it's, I don't want to talk right now, they'll leave me alone. If it's, I want you to just sit and listen to me, as some people were speaking about earlier, they won't say nothing. They'll just listen to what I have to say. They also know what my red flags are, and they know, okay, I'm going to call your mom behind your back because I think, you know, you may be having a manic episode or other things. So it's surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded like you, whether it's the community, the church, your friends, somebody who goes to the beach, somebody at yoga, you know, people who agree with you but are also supportive and they want to learn. They want to educate themselves. Okay, you have For example, I have borderline personality disorder. Most people don't know about it. They know about anxiety, maybe ADHD. So it's fascinating when I meet people who are actually like, hey, tell me about it. What is it? Is it the same as this? Is it the same as that? And then they educate themselves so they're more aware of it and they're more able to help others if they run into someone like that. When it comes to the resilience, I was raised oddly to be a fighter. So as much as nobody was listening to me, I still kept putting up the fight. I am grateful because when I finally gave up on the fight, like I said, I was able to go to the hospital in time for them to give me another chance to fight, which most people don't end up in that same circumstances. But from there, I was able to be surrounded with other people who I realized for the first time I wasn't alone. There were people who, just like me, we thought similar. We thought we were alone. We felt like outcasts. We felt like the emotions we felt was overbearing, and it was better to not be here than to deal with all those emotions, especially when you're in a world where you feel like you're alone and no one feels how you feel. So that also has built my resilience. I also have a 2-year-old who also pushes me to fight. So I do tell people, even with medication and therapy, I do have days sometimes where I'm not the best. And I look at my son and I'm like, but I gotta fight because I have a little 2-year-old who's looking up to me, and to him, I'm the best of the best. So I still try my hardest to go out there and advocate for myself and for others as well. Be resilience is a fight that it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a fight that you just continue to have to. You have to find something that's worth fighting for, whether it's your loved one, your friends, yourself, anything, and it just pushes you to keep going regardless.
Wow. Wow, what a response.
Wow.
I think you have a fan club in the audience. Too right. You talk about it takes a crisis, and you talk very bravely, and what a relationship you must have with your mum to be able to say the support wasn't there and then it was, and what a journey for your mum to have been through, to have understood about not being there and then being there, and seeing your child struggle. That must have been a lot. So well done for being here today, Mum.
Yeah.
I knew I needed my tissues. So, when you talk about that change, what was the difference for you? What difference did it make being understood and heard in that moment?
It made a big difference. I didn't feel like I was alone. I felt like within my household, there's somebody that I can talk to who's there for me. Ever since that day, my mom has been my writer. She has been my advocate. So even in certain situations, I've had, sometimes even the medical team, it's not as supportive. You may meet a psychiatrist or a therapist who they may try to push a medication, which has happened to me, and I'm like, hey, that medication is making me feel depressed, or I don't feel like myself. And they're like, no, keep taking it. And my mom has stepped in to say, no, my child is advocating, and I'm stepping up to advocate. So it's a difference when someone is there to help you fight the fight. You're not by yourself fighting the fight.
So it's not just about being heard by your family, it's about being heard by everybody
Yes.
in your system, and that's when it really makes the difference.
Yes.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really hear that when you moved to a point where you sought help and were given help really because you've been fighting for it for a long time, you eventually got what you needed. And I wonder if what you're fighting for here is that young people don't have to get to a crisis in order to get the help and to be heard as they need to be.
Yes, I am. So it's sad to say, when I found out that I would be able to speak on the panel, I did start to post, and there were a lot of people that reached out to me, people I went to school with here, people who I don't know, and a lot of them were in shock that I was speaking. There is a terrible, terrible stigma here on the island about mental health. A lot of people have it. I would say maybe half the people in this room possibly may have, and you guys may be in denial or may not know because it's taboo. Oh, you feel sad? let's be honest, most of us, we drink. It's a thing on island. You drink away your feelings, and everybody gets drunk, and then we feel better, but then the next day, you don't really feel better, you feel worse. Or we know some people just say, go to church, and they'll get rid of it. But a lot of people are afraid that if they speak up, they won't get the job, they won't get the school. Hey, Mr. Boden's son or Mr. Boden's daughter, a lot of us, we go by our last name, so the last name has power, and you don't want people to know that someone in your family is ill. But when we start to speak up and we start to hold hands and unite, I feel as if there will be less situations happening in the Cayman Islands, less young people taking their life, less people feeling like they have to leave the island to actually get that support that they need.
Thank you so much. That's a very powerful message.
Yes.
Monique, thank you so much for being here with us today. As a youth ambassador, and as a parent, you have experienced postpartum depression, and that has been such a journey for you. What have you learned about resilience on that journey, and what have you learned about the support that's necessary and how to manage mental health challenges?
So, what I've learned is that resilience isn't about pushing through in silence. It's about seeking support when needed and also leaning on the ones who care. I've also learned that resilience can also be about perseverance. To have the ability to come back after the setback. And after my experience, actually, I fell in love with fitness. That's why I'm a fitness enthusiast, and I always encourage people, go for a walk. It does something. Get in the gym. Because when you're in the gym, lifting weights, it's just you and your music and the weights. You don't hear anything. Your thoughts are silenced. And even in that space, you can, in fact, build resilience. I also learned how to better manage my mental health through counseling, journaling, and prayer. After my time of overcoming, I found God. And I also learned to give myself grace on the hard days. It takes a lot of work to do that in your time of vulnerability. But that's something that I've learned to do because I was so hard on myself. I was so confused. But grace is what took me to where I am today. And knowing that at the end of the storm, that everything will be okay. Mm-hmm. I came across a quote recently because I was doing some research, and I'd like to share it. It speaks about going through a difficult situation. When you're in it, it feels permanent. Mm. And when you're out, it becomes a paragraph in your chapter, in your story. It doesn't define who you are. So keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And you did that, didn't you? You kept moving forwards. You found the motivation to join clubs and to volunteer. And you've talked previously about just what an impact that had positively for your mental health. But what a task to have to try and undertake as a new parent when you are exhausted, when you have zero resources, to get up and dress and somehow miraculously out of the house to go and do something like that. How did you manage to do that?
The main thing for me was seeing my son grow up. That was the key motivator, shadowing what Toni shared about with her son. You have a son, right? Yes. Okay. It was that for me. That was the motivator, because even though I was struggling mentally, struggling to accept my new reality, when I saw him, I said, I can't give up. I have to keep moving forward. I have to keep going, to keep pushing for him and lead by example. Because that's strength, showing up even when you don't feel like it, even when you maybe don't see a way out, is to still show up. So that was the big thing for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was incredibly powerful. I think what I really hear from you there that stands out and is so common across so many young people who we will see across therapy services is that, and adults, is that when we're in our hardest time, we are the hardest on ourselves. And to try and step out of that into self-compassion or giving ourselves grace, as you say, is so incredibly important in terms of being able to come back after a setback rather than just pushing through in silence. Thank you for sharing. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Laura, you've come to this subject matter with a number of experiences, working in the criminal justice system, working as a life coach, and your experience of losing your husband and being a mother to your young daughter. What have those experiences taught you about what a good support system looks like, and how can we go through the incredibly difficult experiences we come across in life and parent at the same time?
To speak to the criminal justice system aspect first, as the Chief Justice said earlier, I think you're often meeting young people in those circumstances when support systems have failed, when there hasn't been a good enough support system in place. And it was always so interesting to me to observe how much difference just one person in a young person's life could make, a person who would listen. And sometimes that was you. You know, you were their lawyer and you were sitting in the cells with them at a moment of extreme crisis and high stakes for them. And you might be the first person who's asked them what was going on with them, why they did what they did, why what happened. And it was quite devastating, really, to understand that some children were coming into a situation like that with that kind of lack of support. And one of the reasons that I then left being an attorney and have become a life coach is I wanted to do more than just be the person who was able to come in and just listen for a moment. I wanted to be able to have more of an impact. And since becoming a life coach, it's been clear to me that one of the most crucial things, again, is that we listen to young people, because they often know before we do and before the people around them do what is the matter. And Toni was talking about how she was attempting to advocate for herself very early on, but we aren't always listening to our young people in those situations. And that's where I think, and I've come to strongly believe, that coaching has a place as a non-clinical, systems-based and mental health support that is able to provide preemptive mental health support. So before the wheels completely come off, it's something that I've learned can be really helpful, because a key piece of coaching is that listening piece. It is that active listening that Jane was talking about earlier. It's that listening to understand. And then as I came into my own difficulties and having to really understand how to be a support system for my daughter in the wake of the loss of my husband, Derek, 5 years ago, all these pieces started to come together for me. is I understood quite early on that if I wasn't regulated, and if I wasn't well supported, and if I wasn't well resourced, I was not going to be able to help my daughter through her grief. And she was only 2 at the time, and I think a lot of people's reaction to that is, well, children don't grieve. They don't have problems with this. If you don't bring it up with her, she's not going to know anything about it, and that is completely untrue. They may puddle jump, they go into their feelings and then they come out of them again. And what I would hear a lot of is, oh, she's fine, she's fine, you're fine. But we were not fine. I got us to a place where we were okay and we're doing well, but she was not fine. In order to do that, I got myself therapy and I got her therapy. But I think the 2 things that made the biggest difference for me was advocating for myself. And you might wonder what that means when, of course, people were sympathetic to me and people wanted to help, and a lot of people had very good intentions. But people can often say the wrong thing, and help can be well-intentioned but have quite a negative and sometimes damaging impact. And something that I learned through therapy was that it isn't the intent that matters if the impact is negative. And that really helped me understand how to advocate for myself in a way that explained that to the people around me and in my life and in my daughter's life. Because obviously the way I'm treated and the way I'm reacting to that is going to be something that she is watching. And also to speak to what Monique just said as well, which was that pretending everything is fine, or strength as, or resilience as powering through, is such a fallacy. And what I really learned that true strength is about in this is having those bad days and acknowledging them. And I let her see me upset, and I've let her see me grieving, and she knows that Mummy isn't always okay. But what else she sees is that I will then rally, and I will then pull myself together, and then I will move forward. But it isn't moving forward pretending everything is fine. It's not moving forward business as usual. It's allowing those feelings to come, and I really wanted her to know that all her feelings were valid in our home, that she could have sad days and bad days, and she could have them at school, and she could have them with her friends, and that if she wasn't receiving the support that she needed, I wanted to model to her how to ask for that. So they were 2 things that I did. And I think the final piece, which I think everybody here has spoken about, is connection. There are times as a solo widow parent when you feel very, very alone. And sometimes the things that people say can inadvertently make you feel more alone. And one of the things that I did early on that I'm so pleased that I did was find other widows, other young widows who had young children. And I went on a grief course, and I stayed in contact with a group of those widows. And I cannot tell you how supportive and how validating it was to be connected to those women who understood what I had gone through, but also who were part of a space where I felt like I belonged. Because when you go through, as many of you here will know, a traumatic or a difficult experience, you often don't feel like you belong in your own life anymore. And this was something that was incredibly important. And those were things that I struggled with as a grown woman with resources and a voice. So I can only imagine what young people feel like when they are treated in that way, when they're told they just have to carry on, or they're told, you're fine. So I do think it's really important to provide those spaces for young people to have those kind of connections, to be able to speak for themselves.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences from both a professional and a personal perspective. I really hear that professionally you can see that it sometimes just takes one person to make a difference, just as the Chief Justice was talking about earlier today. And personally, and I think we can all learn from this, that giving advice isn't often or always helpful, but listening is pretty much always helpful. Yeah. And so if we can do one thing, It's to listen rather than give advice, no matter how good our intentions are. And something certainly I would advocate for is that all children are impacted by their experience. We may not have chronological memory in the way we know it as grown-ups, but we do have emotional memory from the moment we are born, hence why we have trauma before we have chronological memory. So thank you so much for sharing that very deep and personal experience with us. It really makes me think about the power of listening and not finding solutions. And it would be really easy to think that as a child psychologist, I had all my ducks in a row with parenting. And I had a parent say to me the other day, well, you must not get stressed because of your job. You must not lose your rag with your parents. Well, last night, and I said to her, no, that's not true. My husband sat next to me laughing because he sees me in all of my worst states of parenting. Last night, I'm struggling with my eldest daughter going to sleep. She's 10, and she's always been a really good sleeper. But lately, she's been really struggling to go to sleep, and recently I've been up with her until like 11 p.m., and I'm like a 9:30 person. Easy going to bed. And it gets me in my worst moment because I've listened to 5 or 6 young people and families in the day. I've tried to solve problems. I've tried to understand trauma. And I go home, I'm attempting to make some semblance of food that everybody can eat. Maybe get a thank you, but probably not. I try to make sure my children are clean, and they don't have nits in their hair. I mean, good Lord, that's a challenge. And then at like 9:30, when my daughter's struggling to sleep, she's like, Mummy, I need to talk to you about something. I'm struggling with my reading. And then we get the tears, and she's overtired. And I am not co-regulating last night and the night before. I was not co-regulating. I was not listening to understand. I was responding and cutting her off and trying to explain why it was she could absolutely do the reading that she needed to do. And then I kind of caught myself, and she said to me, Mummy, that's not helpful. And I thought, no, you're so right. I'm being so incredibly unhelpful. She said to me, I thought you knew what you were doing. I'm like, so did I. I absolutely do not. A lot of the time, feel like I know what I am doing. But I'm trying to think. I was talking to these amazing women yesterday, and I was saying I'm struggling with this, and I said I don't know why. I've got this feeling, and I don't know why. And as I was failing last night again, I was trying to understand my feeling. Why am I struggling with this? And I realized, and it's been said before today by Dr. Panton, she said, it's because I see in her the struggle, the failure that I was as a child. I see myself failing again, and I am desperate for her not to fail in the way that I felt I was failing. I'm desperate for her not to feel like she's failing, because she is so good enough. She is so incredibly warm and kind. She's not the cleverest in her class. She's not the best at anything in her class, and she hates that. She wants to be the best at something. And so she took something she's really not very good at, reading, thought she could turn it into her best thing, and then is melting down. So it's been really helpful being here today and talking to these amazing women, because I'm now kind of figuring out what is it I'm struggling with. But I'm telling you this not for you to feel sorry for me, but I have done this for 20 years. And I have got training upon training upon training of childhood trauma, child psychology, you name them. I mean, it looks like a lot on paper, and yet I'm still failing. And I still feel like a terrible parent in those moments. And I say that because every parent in this room has moments where they feel exactly those things. And you are not alone, not even different to the professionals. We are all in the same bucket of attempting to do our best parenting. And if we're trying to figure it out why we're struggling, then we are always going to be doing the right thing for our children because we are trying to figure it out. So I'm going to go back tonight. Thank you. I'm going to go back tonight and I'm going to repair. And I'm going to say, you did not need that from me last night. That made you feel really alone and like you weren't good enough. The exact thing I'm trying to stop. You know, so I'm absolutely here, and let's talk about this. What do you need? Tell me about how you're feeling, and try and take the time. But I'm going to be like, let's just not do it at 11 p.m. So, on that, thank you for listening to me. On that note, I just want to come to one last thought from each of you, because I think everybody will agree we're incredibly privileged to hear from your experiences today, and you're very brave to share, thank you, with me. So just one last thought from everybody, please. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, so in closing, I'd say lighting the way. It really means learning the signs and listening between the words, creating safe spaces, as we've been hearing, acting early by all costs, and building systems that don't just respond to a crisis, that crisis moment, but prevents it. And it's as simple as listening, because when a child feels seen early, when they don't have to mask to survive, and when they are supported before breaking, then that's when hope becomes action and then leads to transformation. Thank you.
Toni, your last thoughts.
My last thought is, it's a choice that we make. I chose not to be a victim. I chose to be victorious with my situation. It's not easy for everyone else. I'm not sure who's here or who's listening. If you feel some type of way, advocate for yourself, speak up. If your parents aren't, your friends aren't, find someone, anybody. I saw outside they have a hotline number now that you can call, and a random person will talk to you. You don't even have to give your name, but just talk to anybody, reach out to someone. Times are changing. Someone, even if it's not the first person or the second person, someone is there that's going to hear you. If you find me on social media and you want to reach out to me, even if it's me, somebody will sit there and listen to you. It's better that you advocate and speak up and say how you're feeling 1,000 times rather than you feel like you're alone, because there are people out there. There's people like me who are proud to say, hey, we have mental illnesses, but guess what? That doesn't make us different. That doesn't change who we are as individuals. Maybe our emotions are different, but we're still human beings who are still trying to put up a fight to still be here. That's just my only thoughts. Yeah. Oh, one last thing, because I don't feel right. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Laura and her husband, Coach Derek. Years ago, I used to run track and field, and when my sister passed away and I went through a manic episode, her husband and her did step in. So that's what I mean by support system. I didn't say anything to them. They just realized I was missing track and field. I wasn't really showing up. I wasn't answering the group chat. And they just randomly knocked on my door and was like, hey, we're just checking in. So that's what I mean as a community, just stepping in and supporting your loved ones, supporting people, you know, watching and seeing.
Thank you so much, Toni. Monique.
My final thoughts and words would be to know that strength comes from not doing it alone, but seeking support. Mm-hmm. Strength comes from showing up amidst it all on your hardest days. Strength comes from maybe the people that you love. It could come from that person that you can call on. And even if you don't have anyone to call on, I'm not sure if there's any religious people here, but you can pray.
Yeah.
Prayer works. It really does. When you feel as though you have no one, and it is the end, talk to God.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Monique. Laura, your final thoughts, please.
I have to say, as we wrap up this panel, my final thoughts are just how proud I am of these young people coming up here on this stage and sharing their experiences with everybody. And I think what I really gather from what everyone, including Dr. Chantal, has shared today is that resilience really is built in community, and the more we can gather together and listen and share our experiences without judgment, the stronger we're all going to be.
Thank you. So that leaves me to just say thank you so incredibly much for taking your time, for bringing your vulnerability to show how people can get along in life with mental health challenges, and showing us what good support system looks like and what we should try to strive to do for our young people. Thank you so much. Okay.